Are memories transferable between animals? Are they edible? Let me tell you about a science scandal that was brought back after 60 years, and there may have been some truth to it after all. I do love science scandals, and this one sparked an entire field extending into mammals and snuffed it out just as quick, and it took this long for it to come back. It has to do with our friend Planaria. Yes, flatworms, those are eyes. Planaria are fascinating because they can be cut into little pieces and then still survive. You can take a little chunk and then that will grow into an entire other animal, and sometimes they don't know where to put the head. But yes, people wanted to know what happens to their memory if it's not in their brain, because they are the smallest animal, the simplest animal with a nervous system. So they asked the question, if you trained Planaria with classical conditioning, would the other half of them remember? And then, if you then fed that half to other Planaria, would the new Planaria remember? And yes, a resounding yes, they associated electric shocks with light. This phenomenon was also studied in mammals. In fact, researchers managed to take rats and then train them, and then take the brains of the trained rats and inject it into a new set of rats, and voila! They were then trained. At least that was the story. Except they weren't. Now this is a fascinating part because lots of research groups did experiments that involved training Planaria, and then all of a sudden no one could reproduce the experiments. No one could train the worms. In fact, it was called into question whether or not they could be classically trained at all. As a result, this entire field became radioactive. You would be laughed out of the room if you were studying it. Until recently, where researchers have found that yes, you can transfer memory using these methods. In fact, it was demonstrated in sea slugs, of all creatures. Yeah, you can train a sea slug and then take some of its RNA and donate it to a naive recipient, and that one will regain some of its sensory memory. We believe that this has to do with RNA, and it is a system that worked in sea slugs. And then again, and Michael Levin is one of the authors on this paper, they did demonstrate that yes, you can train Planaria, and then if you slice them in half, at least some of the memory is stored in the other half, so not in its brain. This is cognition stored outside of the brain, at least in a simple animal. And yes, training of Planaria has been repeated in lots of different experiments. Turned out, yes, they are trainable, we just needed better technology to watch them and better methods to do so. We've also found extracellular memories that can be sent between animals. This happens with C. elegans, a model organism, also a little guy. Normally they're extremely attracted to things like ethanol because they do tend to eat rotting stuff and ethanol is produced. However, you can pair ethanol with heat, and then they will become averse to that chemical, and they will go around telling other C. elegans about it. It's almost like they're talking. They're able to communicate complex information about possible dangers just using these little blobs of information. In this case, yes, you can eat memory. Thanks to science that was conducted by researchers who were willing to take a closer look at science that was considered laughable, we again have an entirely new field. Even if the original research was flawed, even though we can find possible other explanations, this is something that happens in science, and it really bothers me when something becomes so scandalized that you're not allowed to touch it. And by the way, you might recognize some pretty big names from this failed rat study. Science is not about proving your hypothesis correct, it is about developing a complete picture. This is one area where you really do not want to have immense pressure to be correct and have fantastical findings, because this echoes through the field and can set it back by decades. Just to keep the story straight, it is unlikely that Planaria are actually gaining any memories by eating each other. It's also unlikely that much information is passed into you from eating others, although prions can be. And those are a form of information. They're just a form of information that causes spongiform encephalopathy. Contagious proteins, and we've discovered that in some organisms like fungi, prions are really important to pass information from a parent to offspring. And one of my favorite topics, because people didn't believe it, memories, fearful memories being passed from parent to offspring in mammals, is demonstrated in mice. And the first person who did this, people didn't believe him because it was such a wild claim. People had to repeat it, and repeating science is really important because it shows that different labs under different conditions can find the same phenomena. We don't want to believe that scientists generally have any ill intentions, but we also don't know what their methods were like or if they found some odd circumstance that something happened. So yes, we still do not know how. It's epigenetic, so outside of the genome, and it is to be announced. I hope you've enjoyed this. I will keep bringing you cutting-edge weird science. Follow for more.